I want to make a video for the general public surrounding drugs, and the United States of America. Other countries have their own issues with them, they have their own regulations. However, they're all interconnected because, as we know, a lot of wars that have occurred are about drugs, whether people like to realize it or not. Weapons, drugs, port wars. So this compounds to become very dangerous for a lot of individuals. And what I want to speak on is how, as a woman caught in the middle of a war between governments and drug dealers, and the interconnection between the two has caused me to have to go through a lot of hardship. Now, because I'm from the United States of America, there are some government officials that do not want me to speak up or to be taken seriously because that makes them look really bad for either not caring or mishandling things, as well as what's happened to me being overlooked and overshadowed by lies so that people can get away with that. So when you're a young person, you're going to be exposed to a variety of different drugs. Most countries that you're in, it's going to depend on how your country educates you on them. I was really fortunate to grow up with what's called DARE. It's like a whole group of people that go to different schools and educate kids on drugs and what they can do to your life. Now, we also have to consider that big pharmaceutical companies also have drugs. So while a lot of moms like to focus on things like marijuana or cocaine or heroin or whatever the other trending drugs are, I feel like those are the three like normal ones, and then everything else is like an offshoot of it. I don't have a lot of experience with drugs, so I'm not going to be the person to talk about everything. And I don't have the answers for everything, but what I want to focus on is my experiences as a woman who's been caught in the middle, and the reason that I've been here to try to mediate this war, just like a lot of other individuals have been trying to mediate it as well. The United States of America is one of the main countries that have tried to do that, to change the regulations and to try to allow people to take seriously what happens with this. So I'm going to give a few examples that happened to me in my life. So I'm speaking up about my life. Now, this is what kind of happened. So I was interacting with people as a young person who had interactions with government and drugs, both of them, that's right. And they got paranoid about me caring, right? So I was living my own life. I had already been through a lot, and I had already experienced being drugged and raped. I had already experienced being homeless. I had already experienced, being separated from family and school and friends, because when you get drugged and raped, it does change you. And the way that I dealt with these situations was not always the way that maybe they should be dealt with, but how are you supposed to when you're going through them? So, these people all got paranoid, and then they got scared that I was going to tell on them, right? So what happened to me is I got drugged, I got tied up, and I got gang raped with a bag over my head as a threat for me to not say anything. And they threatened my family as well, and said they would do the same thing to my sisters if I ever spoke up. So this happened to me. This is a horrible thing that happened to me that I somehow lived through, just like the other rapes that I've lived through that I didn't speak up about. Now, fast forward in time, and I assume that, they've gone on their path and I've gone on mine, dealing with this trauma, which you kind of like black out from happening because it's a way that you can move forward. So like, I still went to school, I went to work, I lived my life, and yeah, I ended up homeless, I ended up in weird situations, but my whole life I've interacted with a bunch of different individuals. So I've interacted with people who are in government who are more dangerous than people who are in drugs. So it's like dependent on what kind of people you're interacting with and who they are as people on the inside. Years later, I interacted with other people that have positions in either side, and there were no complications. But what happens is people in the middle cause a ton of chaos, or people that try to be like, one person, my ex, said he was a puppet master. I don't know what he meant by that, but at this time I'm beginning to believe that it's something pretty horrible and that caused some bad things to happen to more than just me. But I'm unclear, and I can't speak on that because I don't have the facts for sure. That would have to be something that government officials and dealers worked out amongst themselves, because they would be able to have a clearer picture about it. But that would also mean that dealers and government officials would have to be big enough to have a conversation, and then say, what are we going to do about this? Because it's usually people like me that get harmed, and we're not the ones that people were looking for to harm. But it's not just people like me, it's a bunch of other people who get caught in the middle. It's wives, it's daughters, it's aunts, it's uncles, it's fathers, it's sons, it's a bunch of people that get caught in the middle. I'm not doing a video on addiction problems and how to deal with addiction because I've never been an addict of anything but snacks and food. And I'm being very genuine and serious there. So I know how to talk about how I dealt with that addiction and how eating my emotions was kind of like how I dealt with my life, and how I struggled with eating multiple loaves of bread in one sitting if I made like banana bread or zucchini bread or something. I don't know how to talk to people about drug issues. My assumption was that the answer was, you know, connecting people to their spirituality, their connection to Great Spirit, God, Allah, Shiva, whatever force they have. And that was my assumption for what would cause us to have less drug issues, because a person who is connected to their spirit isn't going to want to escape reality, because their escape is going to be to God. They're going to pray, they're going to meditate, they're going to connect, they're going to live, they're going to be actively surrounded by the reminders of God or whatever it is that you believe in every single day, which will keep them connected to something bigger than themselves and make them less likely to want to escape, because most of the time people that are addicted to drugs are escaping. Now, this is separate from somebody who needs to rely on medicines for injuries, but I just want to talk a little bit more about how in my life these situations have compounded to get me very harmed. So I got hit in the spine with a chair, which broke my spine, and then my MRI got covered up and I got medically tortured. Whether or not the people involved want to admit to that is not really my problem. That's going to have a ricochet effect for each of them that will go beyond this time period. I don't really care what happens to any of them. The people that broke my spine, medically tortured me, thought that I deserved it. I hope that they all die, which is a very normal response, but I'll delegate it to God so that if they do, everyone in their family looks up instead of continuing to point a finger at me, which happened a lot in this time period. So that was also a compounded situation that I believe also involved people trying to look for someone that clearly got others in trouble in the drug industry. So it connected to a time period when I was in my mid-20s. A man came up to me and said, I went to jail. And I was like, oh, I did too. Because I went to jail for operating after suspension, driving a car without a license. And he meant like he went to jail for something different. But I was young and I was like interacting in a normal way, which means that I'm autistic. So it takes me time to go through every interaction, but I have a really excellent memory. So that saves me every time, because once I go through everything, I'm like, oh, now I see the bigger picture. So that was him wondering if I was the reason that he went to jail. But I didn't figure that out until after I got hit in the spine with a chair by my ex. So some people think that that is drug retaliation, right? That's something that I deserved. And then people covered it up and threatened a bunch of others. And it ended up being a situation that manifested to cause mass chaos. And then some people from my past ex-friends or ex-partners who lied and contributed to things negatively tried to make people feel bad for them, or tried to make people feel like something happened for them and all of these things so that they could also distract from the situation. So all of these people have one thing in common, which is that they misled and distracted the general public from a situation that could have kindly brought to light what happens and made great change. But all of those liars from my past decided to make me seem untrustworthy. So if you heard that about me, you heard it from a liar, or from what I call like a gossiper or a chickenhead or whatever. It's basically somebody who heard something from someone who's a liar, and then they spread it around until it becomes such an issue that it's being talked about on game devices, it's being talked about on the phone to each other, it's being talked about on the interweb, it's being talked about or represented or misrepresented in movies, in cinema, in songs. It's being talked about in such a way that gets more people dead because of those few liars who started that rumor. So if you heard I was untrustworthy, you heard it from the mouth of a liar or from someone who is compounding these situations. These are the dangerous people involved. So next time you hear something like that, tell that person to shut up. Say, you need to shut up because you could get me shot or you could get shot if you're not careful, because sometimes each of you don't realize what person's life you're getting into. So this is a box that my dad made for me, my biological father. It's got a dovetail box, and I joke and say it's like, you know, they've got Pandora's box. So I joked around and I'm like, well, I guess people opened up the box of my life and didn't really know what they were going to get. So while for a while it was perfectly fine for each of you to do what's called smoke showing, which means misleading people into thinking I'm bad or the reason for bad or the one that's messing things up, now that I lived through all of this, it's starting to get clarified and people will begin to see what happened. So the reason I wrote to the president about legalizing drugs is not because I'm a dealer, not because I'm an addict, and not because I'm a government official. It's because I'm a woman who's been put in the middle of this for far too long. All of the people who discounted me as an individual or tried to make me untrustworthy or tried to make it seem like I was one of the three things that I'm not so that people wouldn't believe me, they're a huge issue in society as a whole, because they are the people who get people killed. They are the ones who cause mass deaths to happen to entire families because they want to lie to get away with things that they've done. You got to be careful what you run your mouth about, because sometimes you just don't know what you're talking about. And in this time period, I have been trying to mediate with people, knowing that people were paying attention because some people thought I deserved this and some people got confused. Now I'm mediating because I don't want police caught in the middle. I don't want government officials caught in the middle. I don't want innocent families caught in the middle. I don't want dealers' families caught in the middle, just like everybody claims that they don't want their families caught in the middle. So then why haven't we come up with a beneficial solution for all? And when I was given a chance to do that and to speak up and to be taken seriously, a bunch of people who are liars trying to discount me for themselves is a huge discredit to this movement and many other movements that I was involved in this time period. My life has been at risk. Physically, emotionally, and intellectually. My finances have been at risk. This has caused a ricochet effect that's directly affected my life, the life of my community members, and the lives of many others that get caught in the middle, and they know. These are wars that stem into other countries, and those countries know. They know what happens, just like the people here who lied know what happens. I am trying to speak up about something that I have had to live through because of a bunch of people who decided to either be too paranoid or to wrongfully get me caught in the middle of things so they could get away with who they are. I'm not okay with any of it, but I am going to continue to speak up about it because I hope that we can see real world action instead of this effect right now that I'm seeing in my own country where things are starting to be twisted up and go wrong. Because now Big Pharma is once again seeming to take control over our country and others as well. I call them Big Pharma Mafia because they also communicate with other people that are dangerous and try to get them involved and try to make them all wound up so that they target people like me that are trying to make peace because they fear what the world would be like. So this is a really important time period for us to ask ourselves, how many more people need to die for pointless wars that are caused by people who lie or people who run their mouths or people who get caught in the middle? I know that it's not several other drug trades because it seems like the people that are involved in those drug trades realized what was happening in time and did what was right and mediated. But it does seem like the cocaine trade is the one that did not. It seems like that's the trade that got me really harmed in this time period. And I'm just trying to figure out where things got crossed and messed up so that we can actually move forward and have a better world, because people will allow me to mediate as a woman who's not on any side, but is a mediator. So for all of the people who lied about me so that you could get away with things, you are a huge disservice to everyone, because you're part of the reason that this will continue, because each of you think that you're untouchable, and each of you think that you can get away with putting women like me in danger, covering for yourselves. And I'm here to just remind you that that's not going to happen anymore, because the world is so connected that people are going to start to understand what's going on, and then they won't allow it to happen anymore. And then each of you here around me that evidently thought this was perfectly fine because it was happening to me and other people and not you, will hopefully either change or be seen for who and what you are. This is what I can see as the only way forward to keep the most people safe. I don't have answers about regulations. I don't have answers for how you're going to deal with things. And I'm not talking about how to prevent addiction, because again, my voice has been used to say preventing addiction means connecting people to their spirit once more. That's what I believe is the key. I have had a very, very rich spiritual life. So I'm a poor woman financially, but my whole life I have had a connection to spirit that is undeniable and unbreakable. And that's probably what's kept me from being an addict of everything but snacks. But even if you don't have money, you can't go buy snacks that are cake either. So, these are the things that people have to look at. You have to understand when you're dealing with situations. I know what to say and what not to say. So if I say the cocaine industry is the problem here and is what causes chaos, it means that all of the people in the cocaine industry that are adults need to sit down together, whether in government or not, and say, as adults, we can't let this happen for women anymore. We can't let women and children and families and innocent men get caught in the middle of this anymore. What are we going to do as adults to deal with this? And then you guys that know about everything need to be the ones to get all the people in the middle to stop it. Because I've been trying to speak up and mediate about real things, real world things that I've had to live through that I stayed silent about, but I lived this long. So for all the people in the middle who try to silence me, make me unaccountable or anything else, you have caused the deaths of a bunch of other people by doing that, and you are the very people who are the issues. I hope that this is clarity enough, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Hopefully this video will post without my algorithms being affected, and hopefully people will begin to take this seriously, because we have a chance now to actually change the world for the better. But it will never change if we continue with this model, which is a bunch of liars getting people like me harmed and killed, all for their own benefit.